Alright, another Inmendum video. Sorry, it's just on my mind and I can't really move on to other things until kind of get through some of this crap. So this determinism stuff, and it sort of does relate, I think, in a kind of an important way to the fact that our intelligence does have there's a breakdown point in terms of playing the game once you eliminate the game. And once you know that we're in a game, you can't really play the game anymore because you're seeing how the game is just manipulating you. It's like the analogy I use of climbing out of the maze, and you see the train wreck all around you, and you say, why would I climb back into a train wreck? Why would I play train wreck? And that's the advantage of determinism being accepted, is that it does take away any hope of there being any function to what we're doing, because this isn't the idea of a rational God. It's the idea of a dumb natural force that made these things that have to care because they have a welfare. They have a personal that was fun or that was horrible experience. And that's the nature or the existence of the priority or the obligation to serve or be obedient to this mechanism that makes us vulnerable to having experiences that are innately don't ever do that again, and innately I could do with some more of that, please. It's attraction and repulsion. It's the moving mechanism, and the moving mechanism doesn't have any rational origin. It just happens to things that exist that have the mechanism that creates the feelings. And as soon as it has those feelings, it needs a mechanism to deal with them, to get them to prevent the wrong feelings from happening and have the right feelings happen. The right state of being, comfort. I guess that's the simplest. Keep it simple. Comfort and discomfort. And it's clearly the cupcake and nail in your eye analogy. The differences are obvious. Innate, part of the nature of it. You can't get any deeper. You can't extract anything else out of it. It's the basic function of the sentient organism, is the priority of the positive and negative experience. Alright, and so that gets to the whole Effelism thing and blah blah blah, which is, important. So it's a good conversation to have. Now, this conversation with these people, these kind of glibists, I call them, who are sort of like the free will people who would make the argument that because there's no free will, therefore we can't blame criminals for being criminals. And there's a point where, yes, of course, in the sense that if their criminality had no future implications, there would be some sense to recognizing their failure was our failure not to raise them properly, or you could blame it on all the factors that made them so dysfunctional. And and some of those factors could just be mental illness, something that wasn't anything you could prevent. It was just systemic, something that's going to happen. A certain number of the babies are going to be defective in ways you're not going to be able to see the defect until the defect is realized in some negative bad consequence. And that's another reason to say it's a game not worth playing, just because you have this stupid whatever it is with the bullet and the gun thing. You're playing Russian roulette, and a smart person wouldn't do that. But anyway, so that's another kind of argument that can be made about the very fact of something being broken. Now, what do you do about it? Clearly, the argument is, well, you either try to eliminate as much of that danger, the dangerous potential of making defective humans, or if you can't do that, you can have shortcut mechanisms where you create deterrence, you create some atmospheric conditions where the criminal mentality will be deterred. So even if they want and they would have committed a crime, they won't commit it because they're afraid of the consequences of it. And that does in fact work. But the only way it works is you have to punish people who have committed crimes. Whether they could have done otherwise or not is irrelevant. Deterrence only works if you punish the people who are like the people who are going to commit the crime tomorrow. And that's all you're doing. So it's perfectly rational. So I'm just saying that's a mechanical, pragmatic argument. It doesn't have really anything to do with the judgment part of saying, of agreeing that they couldn't have done otherwise. It's really not the point whether they could do otherwise. The point is are they broken, and is it effective to prevent future damage by not letting the broken people loose, or giving other broken people in society reason not to actualize their brokenness. It's just obvious in terms of the logic of how you apply the deterrence, the mechanism that will prevent harm by imposing some harm, obviously. But the harm you impose is better than the harm that would happen if you didn't impose it. I would say clearly. Prevention is worth the price you have to pay for it in most cases, in many cases. So that's a kind of a separate free will discussion. So that's one kind of argument where people are like trying to say there's something ludicrous in what we're doing because they think we're punishing people for the fun of it. And that's not really why it happens. Yes, there's lots of people who feel better because we beat the shit out of shitty people. But that doesn't mean that's why it exists. It exists because it works. Deterrence works. That's why it exists. And the fact that some people misunderstand its function doesn't change the fact that it works. And so they cheat the argument. They straw man the argument by assuming that everybody is punishing people because they just want revenge. When, no, what they want is to validate civilization and protect it from future harm. Stop the next victim from being a victim. Alright, so that's just a simple logical equation. And in some senses, that's all I'm arguing for in this argument is, yes, we accept that we're all just mechanical devices, that we'll only talk what we've been taught to speak. We can only use language that we've learned. We can only understand concepts that we have. I can't use the analogy of the Christmas Carol or some other Dickens story as fodder or description if I didn't see it. So I have to be built to see things and then to respond when I recognize, here's an image of a little Vietnam girl blown up and firebombed or whatever, some horror image, and I see something coming in the future, and I compare the images and I say, look, it's the same thing's about to happen. We're almost there. We've hit almost all the same phone number, and the number is to hell. You're dialing up hell, and you've hit 6 of the 7 digits that are going to get you to hell. And you can see that, and you say, okay, I saw that, I'm going to explain it to you, that's what I'm seeing. You're writing the prescription to hell. And one more letter and it's done. and you've committed the act. So just do that overtly, okay? Just understand that's what you're doing. So when you press that button, you're saying it's the happy cheese button. I'm just telling you, it's not the happy cheese button. I have the picture. I have the number to compare it to. You're not hitting the happy cheese button. You're hitting the fuck the future button. And and I'm going to make that argument because it's just sensible for me to say it. That's part of the determinism. I'm not stupid. I'm not a rock. I'm not a inanimate object that just watches things happen. Watches just where things just happen and the photons don't mean anything and nothing gets organized. No, I'm a device that does this specific function of seeing things in the environment and comparing them to good and bad that I've seen before, and raising my hand when bad's coming. It's coming right down the tracks, heading right for us, and it's time to say it's heading right for us, assholes. You gotta get off the track, get on a different track. And it seems there's some resistance to that conversation. So even though you acknowledge the fact that, yes, I'm doing a completely mechanical process, it's just the universe doing it, in the sense that it didn't come from someplace else. It only came from 20,000 years of human brutality to acquire our civilization, and the fact that I went to high school and all that crap. I mean, and I had tons of great literature to read, and stories and metaphors and fables and whatever the Chinese version of that is, Confucianisms. I had lots of things to give me the capacity to have the very good radar in terms of detecting potential problems, let's say. And so I can see them. I can do that comparison. And I can understand that we're not, my radar isn't just what's in it for Gary. It's saying everything that's out there isn't any different than my vulnerability. The vulnerability that every brain is in is not any different than mine. It might as well be me, so to speak. And if I'm going to allow it to happen to them, it's effectively the same thing as allowing it to happen to me. That's logic. How is that not logic? If somebody's going to disagree, how is that not logic? For me to recognize that simple truth, that if I'm allowing it, then I'm not stopping it. I mean, they are opposites, reciprocals. So yeah, so the mystic's tone, he's clearly, he talks like a value nihilist in this determinism conversation. Very little indication that he gets it. So he gave some indication in this little skit, where he says, well, yeah, I mean, we got fucked by the guy who made the video, and he shouldn't have done that. Sure, I can say that. But that wasn't, me saying he shouldn't have done it isn't going to go back in the past and change something so he doesn't do it. And he's presuming that somehow anybody who argues against allowing it to happen in the future again, when we see exactly the same numbers being pushed on the dial, we see exactly the same programming working its way through, why shouldn't we raise our hand and say, let's stop that? We can't go back in the past and stop it there, but we can stop the one that's going to happen in the future. There's nothing stopping us from stopping it. Determinism will not stop us. What will stop us is some notion that we don't need to do it, that it doesn't need to be done by somebody, and that we can just pretend determinism will do it. Well, determinism will only do it if one of us is determined to do it. That's it. So we have to have the conversation about what we should be determined to do. Protect the future or rape it. What are you determined to do? Are you determined to perpetuate torture on planet Earth? Or do you want to minimize torture on planet Earth? Because the two roads are not anywhere near each other. They're completely different directions, right, left kind of thing. They're 180 degrees opposite. And so that's, you have to commit to one of those. You can't play this game that I'm going to pretend I'm against it, go some kind of straight me path, and pretend I didn't have a decision to make, that there was no decision to be made, that there was no process that I had to be obedient to get to take the right road. And you had to be obedient to at least the process of, you had to choose one of the available roads. You can't just make your own. You're the one violating the obligation to be obedient to what the right road requires, which is you turning left, let's say. That's what it requires. We can see that. Not pressing the number 8 means you have to press some other number. You can't just say determinism will do it. Right, not the. So anyway, that's the nature of the conversation, is about the absence of the important part, that value is at stake regarding the function of this element of determinism, and the fact that part of the determinism is that we are capable of seeing, comparing, and worrying, and doing. These are all things that we do. And if we think we don't have to do any of that process, then we're taking our function out of the universe's function and guaranteeing the outcome as failure rather than success. We're taking the brain of the universe and just putting it in the closet, unplugging it, putting it in the closet. We are the universe's brain. If the universe is universing, we're the only part of the universe that can do anything intelligent. And yet these people are like advocating that the intelligent thing get unplugged and sit in the closet, because we should let the determinism of the stupid things dictate the path. What else are you saying? But anyway, so the mystic made a couple more videos, and one of them is just obnoxious in the sense that because somebody didn't use perfect language, he accused them of being a free willer, right? So somebody can just say overtly, I recognize I'm a robot. I recognize I've been programmed by cultural influences, you know, how many times I was spanked, you know, whether I had a satisfactory time at the fun house, whether I got over being molested, whatever the bullshit is. I had 4 million things that created me. And I don't have anything to do with any of that. That's just the universe universing. And I'm just the ball of gas, you know, the little methane fart that the universe made out of that. But the truth is that these methane farts, when you look at them, you can't tell the one that's got the magic powers from the ones that don't. The ones that are going to be something like a Martin Luther King, and the ones who are going to be a Gandhi or something else. Whether you think they were good people or bad doesn't matter. I'm just saying, whatever the good is, the better human versus the worst human. I'm just saying, I would rather be able to make an affirmative argument if people weren't so crass in their destruction of everything affirmative. So if all I have to make as an argument is they weren't Bundy, they weren't Casey, they weren't somebody who tortured and murdered people. Okay, so if I have to use the negatives, we know the negatives are solid. There was nothing good about the negative people. There might have been some bad things about the good people, but we know there's nothing good about the negative people. They never did a damn thing worth a damn. But anyway, all bad, no good. Nothing to compromise with a positive value. Their evil was not compromised by some positive element. So anyway, now I lost the train of that thought. But yes, you have to allow that to be part of the determinism. And they talk like they know everything we do is futile. We're all insignificant. We're all impotent. And you know, there's no role that we would play. So if it was Martin Luther King as a kid, they'd be saying to him, what are you, some kind of egomaniac? You think you're going to fix something? You think you can do something? You fucking little creepy egomaniac. So, Gandhi getting out of law school, this is the conversation they'd have with him. Who the fuck do you think you are? Why do you think what you say matters? Why do you think you can do anything? I mean, it's a moot point. Unless you think you really have that special power that you can tell what egg is going to hatch and which one isn't, that you can tell, you have some special power and you can make these prognostications about who can and who cannot be effective. And so the mystic self-describing himself as insignificant, well, you can't do much with his personal choice. I can ridicule it because I think he's too smart to think that's true. I think he's too smart to think it could never matter, or there's no hope of it mattering, or that because, there's only a few people on YouTube listening right now, that everything being said has no meaning, and it can't possibly have meaning in the future. He's too smart to be that dumb. So why is he playing this? Why is he pretending that smart people have license to be lazy, or to allow programming of comfort and ease and glibness to wash over them and say, I will evacuate from myself this responsibility of seeing the danger, seeing it coming, and do this necessary process of worry and strategize and think about and how to maneuver, how can I steer this boat right to get through this minefield. We're going through the minefield, and he just wants to not have the angst of being the commander. He's just saying, I'll never be the ship captain, so I don't have to pay attention to this stuff and worry about this stuff. Too much trouble, too much work, too burdensome. And I have the same attitude in the sense that I don't want to do it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to have to constantly, burden my brain with, what my role is and what I have to do and how much skin I have to peel off of my own personal comfort, to live paranoid and afraid. And the difference, I guess, between us is an understanding. That's part of it. Is that his understanding is, I just don't care enough about other people. And so he's just saying, there's not much you can do about that. My mind, body, just doesn't care enough. But the trick is, I don't care either. I don't like other people. I don't like anything much. Mostly. And I certainly don't sincerely feel their pain. Because I can't. I just can't do it. I can't actually feel their pain. So it can't mean something urgent to me in that sense. It can't be personal enough. But what I can do is understand that how I got into this mess is exactly how all those assholes got into their mess. And in that sense, we're identical twins. In that sense, we're clones. We're so close to the same thing that nothing important matters here. There's no important difference between him because he's black or she's fat and obnoxious or none of that shit could possibly matter. It's just a brain on a train that's wrecking, and that's all. And that part is real in the sense that if I'm going to let it happen to them, if I'm going to let it happen to the future, it's the same thing as letting it happen to me. And my brain can't do that. My brain can't just sit back and say, that's okay, I'm going to relive the bullshit all over again, and maybe from a fundamentally, hugely lesser condition. Play the same bad game with even worse cards the next time, and maybe even worse cards the next time, and even worse cards the next time. I mean, it's not going to be any fucking fun. And so in that sense, to me, it's personal. What you're due to the future, I sense it as something you're doing right to me. You fuck them, you're fucking me. So that's the big difference between me and him, is that I see it as personal jeopardy. Consciousness is going to be humiliated. It's not any different than me being humiliated. And why would I just let that happen? Why would I just blindly and glibly walk into that bear trap and think it's okay? It wasn't really me. Like somehow I won because I shoved some kid into the trap. I won. It was a good game. Yeah, excellent strategy. Now, it's a shit strategy. It doesn't work. You can't move the broken leg to somebody else and say, wow, good move, I win. No, there's no win there. And the fact that he doesn't get that part is probably a big difference between us. Because I would have to admit that maybe I am such a surly, shitty son of a bitch. You know, my nature is so fucking shitty that without that perception of the reincarnation, I hate to say it because people just take it all wrong, but the fact that you're going to redo it in different skin, but it's the same doing, that scares the fuck out of me. And so I can't not take the subject seriously because that jeopardy is just too real. So in a sense, it's just like somebody who realizes that a pig is a feeling thing and that there's no point in measuring its intelligence, because that's just saying that it would be okay if Mengele tortured retarded people. It's okay if he, did horrible things to retarded people, because somehow their suffering doesn't matter. And that's all people are doing with the whole animal thing. They're just sitting there making a glib excuse for torturing something because they're saying somehow if it can't think and can't do math, then it can't feel. Which is beyond my comprehension. There's just no way somebody... That's one of the 2 + 2 things. You can't do that math. In my opinion, you really shouldn't be sucking oxygen at all. I mean, after all this time on this planet, and you're still too stupid. You still haven't gotten up to that tiny kindergartner kind of competence in terms of recognizing that the thing you protect yourself from are bad feelings. And not to protect something else from bad feelings is sadistic. It's cruel. It's mean. It's bad. It's bad behavior. And you can't understand that? I mean, like I said, it doesn't require that you change your behavior. If you're just going to claim you're too addicted, you're too fucked up, you're too big a basket case to take any real responsibility for the implications of your behavior, I'll give you that excuse. But don't lie. Don't sit there and tell me you can't add 2 fucking + 2. And I make the same argument about the criminals. There is a certain point where you say, yes, it's determined that they're too stupid to add 2 + 2. But is there really any way to make that make sense, in the sense of how could they be that stupid? How could they live on this planet and see the shit that goes on and say, I'm going to be one of those menaces. I'm going to go menace people. I'm going to go harm things. I'm going to deprive and deprivate and diminish their existence. What the fuck is that? I mean, there's just, I could say there's no excuse. There's obviously an explanation why they're so fucked up. But it's such a catastrophic brokenness that we should be able to detect it in people. I mean, we should be able to, seriously, we should be able to find out if people are that stupid. before we let them act on their stupidity. Because that shouldn't be hard to detect. Somebody who can't add 2 plus 2, we should be able to design a test that screens for that. Alright. That's part of the point I wanted to make. But yeah, it gets deep. But I'm just saying it's not going to go anywhere if the mystic isn't going to acknowledge that the conversation goes further. You can't just stop at, well, it's the universe universing, and therefore everything's a rock. Because it's not. We all still have our radar. We still have our, I can recognize difference between pictures. I can recognize a sequence of buttons pressed, and I can see we're pressing the same buttons that made the bomb go off. Determinism doesn't change that. I'm not ignorant. How is determinism change the fact that that's the kind of machine I am? I have those faculties. Why would I deny them? Why would I be a battleship and say, well, fuck the radar, fuck sonar, fuck every high-tech thing I have, no cell phones, no nothing, fuck, every bit of sophistication, and turn it into a rowboat? Why would anybody do that? What rational reason would they have to do that? Besides this underlying argument of the Glibites that just do what's in it for you, because there's nothing you can do to fix anything. And that's all they're really saying. So they're hiding behind determinism and using it as an excuse to be a fatalist, to be a feudalist, to think that they don't have any role to play. They don't have any responsibility. That they're not like the person who was, let's say, Hitler's maid, who could have any day just shoved a knife in the motherfucker's ass, but didn't. And if she maybe knew better, if she had been informed, like we can inform people now, then they'd have their knife ready. And they'd be ready when the time came and they see the guy with the mustache, they got it ready. Because they know what needed to be done in the past, and they know that the future needs somebody to do it better than they did it. And that's part of the evolution. That's part of the fact of the universe gaining intelligence. We're getting smarter, that's the universe getting smarter. Being able to have these complex conversations outside of the narrow confines of, what do you mean? What God doesn't say that. God doesn't have anything to say about this subject. You can't talk about this because God doesn't talk about this. Even the idea of a God and figuring out how the God would even have free will. I mean, I've joked about it before, but I mean, you can't go anywhere with this notion of a free idea. So God sat around forever, and all of a sudden some idea popped into his imaginary whatever. You have to say brain, right? Because we're supposed to be made in his image. So I suppose there's some comparable functions he has. But what the fuck? I mean, what? You sit around forever, and it just occurs to you one day, oh, I think I'll go be a creator, and I'll go make some things to torture, and I'll fuck it up. I'll make sure I don't do it too seriously, so yeah, it all goes to hell, and then I'll come up with all kinds of wacky edicts where I'll punish the children for the crimes of the parents. All kinds of nasty shit. And they'll all fall for it because they're too fucking stupid. They can't add 2 plus 2. I made sure they couldn't add 2 plus 2 for some reason. Yeah. Alright, so I'll read some comments, but it just seems like this is an argument being, they're provoking with this, throwing this word, there's no I and we're determined, and saying that that's the end of the conversation. Once we've established that your brain is you, that means a bunch of programs, a bunch of, you are your toes, you're your penis, you're your kneecap, you're all your little bits, you're your hormones, and you're a bunch of cartoons and other bullshit that you've been exposed to, but you're not an I. You're just the combination of that shit in the blender, and there's little bits that seem to not get ground up, and they become you in some sense, or whatever this clumps. There's clumps made. Stuff sticks together, and that becomes you. Because there's more green stuff than there is red stuff. The color comes out brown, and so you're a brown maker. You know, so whatever color this philosophy is, that's what this blender made it into through its life experience. It pukes brown. It's an analogy. So I know I was going somewhere with that one too, and I lost it again. But yeah, it's just this idea that the conversation ends with this idea of just saying two simple concepts. Yes, there's no homunculus. The brain is a mixture of all kinds of shit, and it's mixing into you and creating the crooked, the lines are this way and this way and this way and this way, and all the lines end up getting added up into one line that you end up being. Liberal versus conservative. It bends you in a direction, bends you into an identity. But yes, no you really, just a bunch of experiences and the mechanical parts that smash them together. The blender, the body blender. And then this determinism word, again, another conceptually, so what? What's the origin of identity is sort of irrelevant. Just as the identity is irrelevant, it doesn't matter whether there's an I or no I, because what I am is a vector, a thing. I am an actor, and I will act a certain way. That's the way I act. Brown. So it doesn't matter whether there's an I. It doesn't matter whether it's determined. I mean, it matters to me in the sense that, yeah, I like those concepts. I like understanding we're programmed robots, and we're being programmed by a very slowly learning machine, mechanism. The mechanism learns so fucking slow. I mean, 20,000 years, and they're barely doing 2 plus 2. That's pretty sad. So yeah, it's disappointing. It's irritating. It's frustrating that it takes so long to be able to do this, what I think is better than 2 plus 2. To get up to 4Zs and 8Zs, 16Zs. But yes, it's not the end of the conversation. The real conversation is there's stake at risk. There's good and bad, and the balance of it. How much good will be experienced, how much bad will be experienced, is what's at stake in the future. And the future's perfectly accessible. We can plan it. We can create it through recognizing what to not do. Don't press that last digit. Press some other numbers. Make something better happen. Haven't pressed the buttons yet. We can talk about pressing buttons, and we can think about pressing buttons, and we can make sure the other asshole knows, don't press the skull and crossbone button, asshole. Don't do that. So yeah, well, how does that violate determinism? It doesn't violate determinism. It's just us being what we are. Machines that can see. They can see the past. They can see what caused, in the short term, the chain of events that made the past. And it can say, it can make models of the thing. And it can say, look, this model works. If you do this chain of events, this good stuff happens. You do that, if you push those wrong numbers, bad stuff happens. So let's do the right thing, right? So, yeah. So I just, so it's, people who think I'm being obnoxious, no, they're being obnoxious in the sense that they're using these words merely to find an excuse to say it's too much, we can't do it, it's out of our control, there's no I to control it, so there's nobody to control it. You don't need an I. All you need is programs that recognize your function and say, yeah, I can function as completely devoted to the welfare of this little brain. This 3-pound brain here is the only brain that matters. Or you can understand that all the brains matter. And now your brain has to strategize for all the brains. And it's really a burden. It's not fun anymore. It's not as fun. Let's put it that way. So yeah, I'll grant you that. It's not going to be as fun, okay, protecting all the ships in the Navy instead of just yours. But that's your obligation because you know better now. Knowing better means you have to do better. Knowing better means you have to do better. Knowing better, understanding the better and how to make better means you have to do it. The better. Unless you're guaranteed somebody else is going to do it. Unless you got proof somebody else has got to do it. And these evaders of responsibility have no such proof. Alright, so I'll read some of these comments. Maybe I'll go to the Mystic video and read some on his. I think Alan's done a good enough job. I mean, like I said, you can't you can't argue with the Mystic because he just plays word games. So yeah, and so he's just word gamed his way out of the conversation with Alan too, like he does with everybody else. All right, so this Troll Gullible. So I thought it was kind of funny because the Mystic upvoted his comment on one of the Mystic's videos, and it's just so funny because his name, he's a troll by definition. Yes, go ahead, press the wrong button. You don't validate trolls. Anyway, so he says in this silly redundancy, but he did make the video, so he had to do it. It's all very simple. And again, he's strawmanned the argument into somehow when you say should, that means you have some expectation that you can go back in the past and create the should. Create the fix that would change the determinism. Nobody's arguing that. I haven't seen a single person who thinks they can change the past. What they're saying is, we now, alright, are making the future. And so we don't have the same excuse as the past where we can't fix it. We can fix it, okay? We can behave, we can not press the stupid button. We can not press the skull and crossbones because now we know what it means. We've seen the past, we've seen what causes the past, and now we can say, don't do that. And who's saying we should do anything other than that? Who's saying we should do anything other than recognize the past mistake and not remake it? Explain to me, butthole, how exactly anybody's saying anything different. Nobody's saying we can go back in the past and change it. We're saying we can prevent it from happening in the future. So they attempted to do some arguing with him, but it was useless, and he says, I agree. If he did not eat meat, then he did not eat meat. So this is like we can learn something, and he's making the argument. As simple as that. So again, he's saying it's all this simple thing, that when people draw conclusions, or they decide, the brain changes perspective, that happens without a conversation. And it doesn't happen that way. It doesn't happen without the movie being made, or the message being said, or the fantastic phrase being spoken. All of those things are part of that determinism. It was determined. Yeah, it was determined that the process had to be more complicated than... Everybody just shut up. Yeah, the process of the change from where it's pointing to a new direction will require something to happen The determinism requires something to happen for it to move. It doesn't just move by itself. That a particular experience would make him not to. I don't even know what that means. But anyway, idiot. So moving on to the other idiot. Some people say things that are just, there is no you pulling the levers. I was waiting for you to say this. I was confident you're smart enough to get this. I don't know where you thought I had said everything else. I've been saying exactly that for a fucking decade. Where did I say anything other than that? Jesus. Amazingly stupid. Okay, so we'll do this Vader something or other. Vinter Vader. So he's somebody who comments on the Mystics video, so maybe we'll go there and read some of his stupid comments there too. Alright, so he says, Nick understands everything you've said in this video. Well, no, I don't agree he understands the real substantive part, which is understanding the difference between, say, a kid playing on a computer and learning, and a kid in Africa every day for 12 hours turning rocks this big into rocks this big. Because he seems to think either one is just as good. This much should be obvious to all. Well, I don't know how it would be obvious. He's basically said, fuck thinking, fuck being intelligent, go back to your genetic code, whatever that would be. I mean, those are his words. You know, be what you're genetically made to be, if there is such a stupid thing, which is a monkey. You're born a monkey. The only thing that stops you from being a monkey, you know, a silly, poo-throwing, silly monkey, the only thing that stops that is language and conversation and constructing experience and forming a database where information is organized. That's it. Without that, you're a monkey. Your nature is monkey. Everything else isn't your nature. Your nature, you're not born a tea drinker and all that bullshit. You're not born, with your facades of distinction, your sensibilities, your manners. His only point, here we go, is that whether somebody takes control over the bus or not is also entirely predetermined. Well, no one's arguing that it's not predetermined. The argument is whether you can do it if you're just a monkey. If you're going back to your native function, or you're reducing your radar, and you're turning it off, and you're not trying to solve the big picture problems, then nothing will determine the outcome of you getting in the seat and driving the bus successfully. So it just doesn't make any sense. You know, the fact that it's predetermined that somebody will be an asshole, yes. I explained to them, alright, he's a professional bus driver. He's sitting across from me. The bus driver just dropped dead. I say to him, the bus is going 50 miles an hour. We're in big trouble. Could you please get up and drive the bus? Because we're all going to get horribly injured if you don't. And, he's reading his paper and saying, what's in it for me? And I could even explain to him, well, it's sort of in your interest in the sense that the other people on the street, they're going to get run over and all that stuff. They could be your kids, and they could be people you care about, or they could be even you. I mean, if you were walking on the street reading your newspaper and there was a bus that didn't have a driver, but there was a guy who could drive the bus sitting right across from some guy, and he was trying to explain how, hey, it'd be a really good idea if you got in the driver's seat, you'd be pretty pissed off in hindsight, after you got paralyzed and spent the next 30 years drooling on yourself. You'd be saying the whole time you're drooling, that son of a bitch, that son of a bitch, son of a bitch just sat there reading his newspaper. You'd be really pissed off that some motherfucker couldn't add 2 + 2 and get off his fucking ass and sit in the damn seat. That's all. All right. All right. Entirely predetermined. As such, it doesn't make any sense to be judgmental at all. So the primary function, he's saying it doesn't make any sense. Primary function is to recognize mistakes in the past and not make them in the future. It's a primary function. And he's saying it doesn't make any sense to do that. Holy fuck. Not judgmental at all. I mean, it's just insane. It's all we do. That's what your body does when it creates a good feeling or a bad feeling. It's making a judgment. And then your intellect sits there and judges the feelings you're having and saying, gee, that's a shitty feeling. Let's do something to fix that. I mean, it's all judgment, you kook. Alright, since nobody could have done anything different. Again, we're not talking about the past. We're talking about right now and identifying things. And I'm just saying whether or not anything could be any different. Whether or not I can convince the mystic to get off his fucking ass and get in the driver's seat. Okay? Has nothing to do with something that happened in the past. In the sense that I'm not changing the past. I'm just right now measuring whether the mystic is a complete asshole or not. And that's all. If he doesn't get up, I can put asshole over this fucker forever. Because he's an asshole. He's a stupid motherfucking dumb cunt. I'm not asking for any other right. I'm not saying I can force him into the seat. I'm saying if he doesn't get up and sit in the fucking chair, he can't add 2 plus 2. He's a dumb motherfucker. And he should be buried with a big fucking sign on it that says, what a waste of goddamn fucking flesh, this dumb motherfucker. What's so complicated, shit? Alright. I mean, it's just so stupid, since nobody could have done anything different. Again, the point isn't doing anything different. The point is, if we have expectations about the very fact that it's being different is what evolution does. So again, you're almost denying the existence of evolution. So you're saying our knowledge base doesn't evolve, our physical body doesn't, nothing ever evolved on planet Earth. Of course it did. And it's the nature of that evolution that we don't repeat the past, we improve on it if possible. That's the function, you kook. Let's see, my comment was sarcastic. Yeah, well, I kind of thought it was. I certainly read it as such. You seem to want people to act as if they have free will, etc. No, exactly the opposite. Again, how would free will change anything, even if I mean, I've said it 4 million times. There's not even such a thing as the word fucking free, for fuck's sake. I've made videos saying, I'm pleading with people, show me a fucking free somewhere, you dumb lunatics. There's no such thing as a fucking free. It doesn't exist. It's a fucking, it's a nonsense word. The white space of confinement, that's the word. There can be an absence of confinements. There can never be a free. You can only be free from a confinement. The confinement's the real word. If the confinement doesn't exist, yes, you're free of a confinement. Nothing else. You're not free of everything. You're just free of the confinement. Shit. Not complicated. But again, this is such a gross accusation. I have been more aggressive on the subject of free will than the mystic. I've made more videos on the fucking subject. You douche. Let's see. To act as if they have free will, etc. No, so never happened. Not even a reasonable thing to say about my motives. I want people to understand they're fucking programmed robots, and the whole point is by understanding you're a programmed robot, then you'll analyze the fucking programs and say, gee, some of these programs are absolutely shit. Like, I like to watch the stupid Yankees hit a fucking baseball. What a dumbass thing to enjoy doing. Especially when it's incredibly redundant, like they've been doing it for fucking 100 goddamn sucky years, the same bullshit routine. Why do I need to see that performance art redone every fucking 2 days? Gee, that stupid programming. I ought to get that the shit out of my fucking brain. Yeah, that's what I want people to do, you jackass. Alright, free will, etc. in order to be productive rather than nihilistic. No, yes, in order to maximize their potential. That's right, we have potential. in the sense that we have intelligence, we have capacity, we have function. And the point is that because we can see the model, we can see what the bad function is, that we can recognize, don't do that at minimum. We can see wrong and not be wrong. Maybe we can't do right, but we can certainly identify wrong as a probabilistic equation at minimum. Yeah, and then we should act on that. Yes, that's fully within the function of evolution of intelligence and the capacities we have as physical objects. We have that radar. No point in turning it off. And that's what a nihilist is doing. Which I believe you called Nick. Yeah, well, he's a value nihilist most of the time. Like I said, he'll only concede it in superficial ways, that it makes a difference. Beardy Man is pointing out the obvious fact that we don't control jack shit. So again, this we don't control jack shit thing just doesn't mean anything. Obviously, as machines, as robots, we do control. Whether there's a we inside the robot controlling, I'm agreeing. There's no we or I or anything inside of the robot that's controlling, but the robots are controlling devices. They manipulate things. They have arms and legs, and they fuck with shit. We do fuck shit. Alright, and the point is to fuck well, not to fuck badly. And we can see that. Oh, shit. So we do control. It's just idiotic to say we don't control. The whole function of the machine is to control. We have wheat fields that are completely controlled. We have refrigerators we completely controlled. Everything we do is to control something, you idiot. You don't even control yourself. Well, again, the argument isn't that I control myself. The argument is that the knowledge and wisdom controls me. The capacity to add 2 fucking plus 2 controls me. The fact that I can acknowledge that if I let him get fucked, I might as well let me get fucked. I can do that math. You idiot. You have as much control. Again, all this talk as if, I have control in the sense that I do have influence. And you seem to somehow know my influence will mean nothing. It will change nothing. You have that special knowledge somehow. And I want to know where you got that from. Where'd that magic power come from, fucker? Alright, you have as much control as a tree outside your house. So he's turned us into trees, for fuck's sake. So again, just deny the 100 billion brain cells, deny the radar, deny the sonar, deny the whatever, infrared, blah, 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 and the ultraviolet, and the laser, jazzer. Fuck the nuclear power, fuck all the stuff we have, and just pretend we're a fucking rowboat. No, we're not. You think otherwise, question mark. Damn right, I know I'm not a tree, shithead. I mean, it's as stupid as fucking goddamn. You're just declaring yourself a person who can't add 2 plus 2. I would put a sign over the fucking crematorium, that says, do you feel like a tree? Question mark. Anybody who feels like a fucking tree, yeah, go in. You're done. You're finished. Fine, then you are not a determinist. So, again, this straw man argument. Somehow you don't believe in determinism if you can recognize you're not a tree. Holy shit, what a bogus argument. And this is, well, anyway. You have no control, Gary. None. And again, it's not about me controlling. It's about the programs running inside of me that are able to recognize you've just pressed, foobar, on the touchpad, and all you need is the period, and foobar happens. That's what my function is. I'm doing what determinism has built me to do, which is recognize foobar's coming. Idiot. I can do that. Yeah. Getting angry at people for having done dumb or evil things doesn't make any sense. Well, who's arguing to get angry at them? Okay? Who? Where did I argue that, yeah, everybody get angry. Just get angry at all the fucktards. Just get angry at fucktards. No. What I've said is, let's prevent fucktard. Let's identify fucktard as what it is, a menace. You know, Smallpox Mary or whatever her name was. Identify the menace, okay, and prevent it from menacing. Okay. Dumb or evil things doesn't make any sense. So again, it's just so stupid if you're a determinist. So it doesn't make any sense. Like I say, he's used the word getting angry, but let's just identify it as what it is. Okay? Recognizing the difference between broken and functional doesn't make any sense to him. Of course it makes sense to recognize the difference between broken and functional. Since nothing could have been different. Well, again, he keeps talking about nothing could have been different. Who's talking about going back in the past and fixing it? Nobody's suggesting that's a viable option. The argument is we can recognize a past mistake and not repeat it in the future. That we can do. So fuck you in this bullshit analogy that everybody who's arguing to protect the future from stupid mistakes is somehow arguing we're going back in the past to get to the future. No, that's not how you get to the future. You don't go back into the past to get to the future, jackass. You seem to think that there is a distinction worth making between determinism and fatalism, but there isn't. Well, there is a gigantic one, because fatalism is thinking that nobody has to be part of the determinism. Fatalism has built into it that Martin Luther King can't exist. That's what you're saying. You're saying Martin Luther King can't exist. You're saying to Gandhi, Gandhi, you can't exist. You can't be. You're saying to anybody who ever did anything, the first man who landed on the moon, you're saying you can't do it. Of course he can do it. He did it. Okay, and you're saying the next guy can't do it. You're saying we can't learn from the past and make the future better. Of course we can. You're saying we can't not be a dumb monkey. And of course everything, even maybe we haven't been very smart monkeys, but we're clearly not just monkeys anymore. And you can't even see that we're not monkeys. You think we're trees. That's how fucking clueless you are to the process of evolution. Alright, so he was argued with by a couple of people. Yeah, well, here's this guy says it, a perspective fact.